Hello and welcome to the channel. As usual, if you've not already subscribed, then could I ask you to click on the subscribe button below and also the bell to receive notifications when I produce new content. Also, if you can hit the thumbs up to like this, then it helps YouTube to promote the video for many more to see. Finally, if you'd like to buy me a coffee, then there's a link in the description below. Every help is appreciated. Today is part 4 of my Hadrians wall trek. Last time I left off at Walton and said that I'd be picking up the trail at Gillsland, but I realised that I was going to be missing out on one of the best parts of the route to see actual artefacts of the wall. And so part 3 becomes my Lanercost video, where you can see a link to it above. But today we start just to the north of Lanercost on the wall route at Banks Turret West. Now don't forget to watch to the end when I reveal a little of my own family's history and how Banks was so prominent to us. Banks West and East made up Turret 52A. We are very close to halfway between our last port of call, Walton, and the fort at Bird Oswald. Coming up the hill there is little to see of the western section, and so I walk a couple of 100 metres to Turret 52A, an observation turret where there is considerably more to see. The base of what was once a 2-storey building can still be seen with its south-facing entrance door clearly discernible. You know, I find it fascinating to stand in the remains of this building and look out over the hills of North Cumbria through the self-same doorway where countless Roman legionnaires stood almost 2,000 years ago. It would have been a busier, more active place then, as a military outpost on the very edge of the world's biggest ever empire at that time. What stories these walls could tell. Although appearing primitive to the modern eye, the buildings had many features built into them which led the way to amenities considered normal today. Underfloor heating, remote sanitation and drainage systems, and ablutions. It's still possible to see some of the built-in features which serve these comforts today in the form of gullies and trenches designed into the buildings from the outset. Originally, the tower was set into an earth and turf section of the bank. However, within a few years the earth mound was replaced by the stone wall we know today. By the 3rd century AD, the top story had been removed and replaced by a lean-to roof, extending at the level of the top walkway. Following the path eastwards along the route of the wall for another couple of 100 metres, we come to the remnants of the signal tower at Pike Hill. With long views in all directions, it was constructed some 30 years before the construction of the wall began, and overlooked the Stane Gate, a Roman road which ran east-west in the Irthing Valley to the south of the wall. The view to the north, equally important, overlooked the open plains and hills, but today the view is somewhat obscured by trees. For this leg of the trip, I brought along my newest acquisition, my Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II. I've been a long-term user of the original EM1 with its 16 megapixel sensor and beautifully small size. I've happily used the Lumix G9, its much newer rival from Panasonic, but I've wanted an EM1 Mark II for some time now. Putting the 3 cameras side by side, the differences in dimensions are no more than a few millimeters. However, in the hand the feel of them are all totally different, with the EM1 Mark II feeling noticeably larger than its predecessor, but small and nimble against the Lumix G9. The sensors in both of the newer cameras are the similar 20 megapixel size and give very similar results. The Olympus has a comfortable and logical layout of the controls. For this walk, I teamed it up once again with the Lumix 12-60 f3.5 to 5.6 zoom lens. As mentioned in the first video in this series when I set off from Bonus and Solway, there's a link above to that video too, we see the plumb straight road following the wall's path. That's not to say that the wall didn't meander at times, as we saw as it entered Carlisle in the last video, but that was usually to make the best use of natural defensive features such as rivers and hills. The next stop is Piper Syke, a frontier watchtower known as Turret 51A. As with Banks earlier, turrets were small stone watchtowers spaced 2 to every Roman mile, or 1.48 kilometres approximately. Although we think of graffiti as being the scourge of modern buildings, it existed in Roman times too. A stone found around 130 metres from the turret was inscribed with a translation from the original Latin, quote, "The Century of Candidus Crescens." It appears that the centurion Candidus Crescens and his 80 men wanted to leave their mark on the area of wall that they'd built. Onwards to the east as we follow the original wall, which now makes a divider between the modern road to the north and the fields to the south, until once again we reach Bird Oswald, subject of our Part 5 video in the link above. Following the modern road northwards away from the wall, and I cross the earthing where we climb the northern bank and come to the village of Gillsland. I look back down into the valley to see that the wall too has crossed the river, which is now to its north. It's clear to see as we look southwards towards the wall in the distance how the valleys formed a natural defensive break before marauders from the north could reach the wall, leaving them vulnerable in an open or steeply upsloping land. Willowford stands at the entrance to Gillsland and displays a good length of preserved wall. Now, the wall originally stood some 4.5 metres high to an upper walkway, with a 1.5 metre high parapet along its northern side to protect the troops walking along it. The wall was merely part of the defence structure. The wall was outermost to the north, and behind it a deep V-shaped trench and another tall earth mound known as a vallum to the south of that, creating a military zone between it and the wall. Now, I visited Willowford in January 2021, armed with my camera, after a few weeks of enforced isolation after suffering the dreaded COVID. It was considerably colder then, but it rekindled my enthusiasm to take photos again after a break of almost a year due to lockdowns and lack of business opportunities. It was nice to see it again in somewhat warmer conditions this time. Just 100 metres from the entrance to the village of Gillsland is another turret, 48A, with another piece of Roman era graffiti, another "Built this style" inscription. Quote, "From the 6th cohort, the century of Lucius Suavis." The one thing I've noticed has been the friendliness of the people walking the wall, from day trippers doing a short section to those on an expedition along its full length. They have been wonderful to chat with. A couple from the city of Durham with their dog Ruby chatting to me on their break at Banks, and this couple who had travelled from another Roman historic town, Chester in Cheshire. Halfway through the village we leave Cumbria and enter the county of Northumberland. The village is literally split in two, with some addresses having a CA postcode and others an NE one. On from Gillsland we reach Greenhead with its notorious and clutch-burning Greenhead Bank, where many a car's gearbox has met its executioner. And past Thirlwell Castle to our final destination of the day, what is now Walltown Quarry. Walltown is noted for its craggy cliff faces, again in their day an ideal natural defensive line. It also happens to be the place where, as a teenager, I had my first experience of rock climbing and abseiling. Good memories. It's a bleak and foreboding terrain even in late spring, but in the winter it can be savage, with 6-foot deep snow drifts and high winds due to the open terrain. I really cannot see this being the choice posting for most Roman troops in the early 2nd century, can you? And so the journeys end as we go down the little uneven single track road from the crags to the inviting Roman Army Museum. A fascinating exhibition including a collection of artefacts and interactive and engaging displays mixing the ancient with the modern. And to top it off, an eagle-eye view of the wall in stunning 3D cinema. Well worth a visit, even if it's just to sample the on-site cafe and shop. And so our trip ends for this episode, but I did promise you a bit of family history. I've been actively piecing my family tree together, and I found out some time ago that my wife, a local girl from Carlisle, well, her grandfather was born at Banks, where we started today's journey from. It was only when I started the research for today's walk that I discovered that the whole farm at Banks was owned by his parents. So with my ties on the eastern end and my wife's on the west end, we have a great affinity between us for the wall and its history. Look out for the next video in this series, which will be episode 6, Bird Oswald of course being episode 5, where we will be following the route ever eastwards, discovering a tie between the wall the Duke of Normandy, the Lord of Cyprus, and a thief who can travel half the length of England in mere minutes. Confused? It'll all be clear in the next episode. Don't forget, if you've not subscribed to my channel yet, please click on the symbol below. It only takes a second and it's free. And while you're there, please give it a thumbs up like, as that encourages YouTube to promote my videos so that others can enjoy the heritage of Northern England and Southern Scotland through the eyes of a local photographer. And finally, if you'd like to leave me a donation for a coffee or to help making the videos, there's a PayPal link for it below. These people have already been amazing supporters of the channel, and I really do thank them all. Until the next time, goodbye.